Cool. We'll kick things off then. Yeah, welcome everybody to the November community meeting. We just got back from ArgoCon, so it's good to see, I think, almost everybody there um, who's joined here. So that was awesome, and had a great ArgoCon. First announcement on the agenda is the recordings are live. If you want to check them out, we got a link here. Also in the Google Doc, we got a link. So you can check that out at the top of the Google Doc here. A bunch of great Argo Workflows talks, Argo Workflows and CD talks. So that was really, really fun time, busy Monday. And then I believe KubeCon main event talks are live too. I was going to ask if anyone on the call did a main event talk, if you know your Argo or KubeCon talk is live. Does anybody know? Okay, we'll have to check on that. But I imagine those are live pretty soon. Other quick announcement we had was Argo Workflows 3.5.1 is out with some patch releases or patch fixes. So thanks everybody who reported issues, and then those who did get fixes in. Yeah, extra shout out to Anton, Terry, Alan for pushing fixes recently and diagnosing some issues. So yeah, super great there. We've upgraded, and I think 3.5.2 should be coming soon as well because we have more fixes. I think we merged today for that. So yeah, please do keep reporting if you see feedback for 3.5. And anyone else have comments on 3.5 or ArgoCon they want to share? I'm checking the chat. Thanks, Anton. Cool. We'll have 3.5.2 and 3.4.14 coming soon. Awesome. And
And
Terry, you had a
there,
KubeCon talk. Nice.
there, there are some known issues in 3.5.1 and 3.4.113. So if you're
Mhm.
experiencing some of them, definitely check the issues. They might already be reported and they may be fixed soon.
Yeah, I think the ones that I saw reported were UI related, right? About nodes not appearing. Any other known issues to call out?
There's that one that there was, I think this was fixed now, the server load, although it's not fully fixed issue.
The merged UI for the archive workflows and the regular workflows. 351 fixes the issue we had 350, but there's still discussions happening on how to approach it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not like it's like a full fix because it basically reopens another issue.
Yeah, exactly.
I
cool.
think Terry has the Informer fix coming out. Or I don't know if that already made it to 3.4.13 or the controller.
Yeah, the
Uh,
workflow informer was using incorrect resource version, and that's been fixed and will be included in the following releases.
yeah, those are the big ones.
Thanks for the update. Great. Any other comments on upcoming releases? Cool. Well, yeah, we'll transition over to a community presentation we have. Thanks, Matt Menzenski, for joining us from PayIt. Excited to, yeah, turn it over to you and hear about your migration to Argo the last year or so.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
I'm excited to be here. I think when we started speaking about this, we had only done about half of the migration that I'm kind of talking about today. So uh,
awesome.
it's pretty cool that we're now kind of fully on Argo workflows for everything. Um, so
Thanks for the
thank you,
time. Feel
everybody.
free to, yeah, share your screen. You want to pull anything up?
Yes, I will. I'm trying to figure. I don't do Zoom much, so I'm going to
Oh,
try
yeah,
to do my. Uh,
let
if I
us
can
know.
do my speaker notes and my.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure how that works with speaker notes. In Google Slides or in PowerPoint or Keynote?
Yes, in
What are you
Google
looking at?
Slides.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember that too. Does anybody recall the speaker notes setting in Google Slides? I think So that should work. If you want to, I guess, try share your screen with the speaker notes, we can give you quick feedback if it's working.
I'm not getting to preview the windows, so I'm closing all of my other windows so I don't open, so I don't show the wrong one.
Sorry, Zoom is not helping you out today.
All right, so oh, I have to open my system preferences. I might need to leave this call and come back. I'm on a new computer.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, we'll see you in a minute.
One moment.
And in the meantime, yeah, I can pull up some of the talks and we can check if the KubeCon talks are live. Let's see. So yeah, as Bala just shared in the chat, we have a full ArgoCon playlist here. You can check out all the ArgoCon talks from the past week. And then I think CNCF added some playlists here for main event. We'll check and see. Terry, you said your main event talk hasn't gone live yet?
I haven't checked.
Okay. Cool.
No, still KubeCon events are not published other than keynotes.
It's all the co-located. Okay. Cool. So yeah, for now, your viewing pleasure is only ArgoCon. Make sure to check that stuff out. I guess on this call, Henrik, I see you. You had a talk. You can pull yours up here.
I do think I'm ready. I'm back.
Hey, what's up? Cool. Yeah, we're just taking a look at talks. I can turn it back over to you.
Yeah, apologies for that. I switched my computer right before KubeCon and haven't been on a Zoom call apparently.
All good.
Okay. So this looks like it's working like I had wanted it to.
Yes.
So thanks so much for letting me talk to you, everybody. We've had a really good experience with Argo Workflows, and it's pretty cool to be able to come and talk to the broader community about it. Like Kaylin said, my name is Matt Menzenski. I am a senior engineering manager at a company called PayIt. I'll introduce PayIt a little bit more in another slide or two. I'm over our data engineering and our platform engineering functions. So I've been managing our data team for the last 2.5 years or so, and platform engineering for the last 6 or 7 months. But I've been pretty closely aligned with the platform side of our business for a long time. And yeah, so first I will give you a little bit of introduction to PayIt, who we are, what we do, what's the domain we're operating in. I'll talk a little bit about what it means to be doing data at PayIt, because it's, I think, maybe a little bit atypical from some other data functions. And then I'll get into the meat of it and talk about how we started doing data on Kubernetes with Argo Workflows, with Hera, with Argo CD. So who is PayIt? The short answer is we're a SaaS company. We're based in Kansas City, Missouri in the US. We have a presence over a large area of the US and now in Canada as well. And we get called a fintech, we get called a govtech. I think both of those are generally accurate. We process payments, we work with governments, but we're also, special in our own ways. The short version of what we do is we build a platform that provides self-service capabilities to kind of government agencies and also to constituents of those governments. So living in the modern world, there are all kinds of little mundane, routine interactions that you have with the government. Paying your utility bills, reserving park pavilions, renewing your driver's license, paying parking tickets, all of these things. We are building a layer to sort of make that interaction better for the constituent and also for the agency user. So as a constituent user, you can utilize our sort of platform's front-end tooling, our mobile app, our web app, our SDK in somebody else's mobile app. to do those things: renew your driver's license, renew your motor vehicle registration, submit assistance for family assistance programs, or request a copy of a professional license, all kinds of little things, or potentially large things. As an agency user, you might use some of our back office tooling to update the status on an application or submit it through a workflow. You might view analytics around the adoption of your services last year over this year, look at the differences in revenue for property tax payments last year versus property tax payments this year. You can also manage the kind of payment transaction lifecycle. Maybe you need to issue refunds or investigate a disputed transaction, view settlement information, disbursement information. This is a lot, right? Each of these things I'm mentioning kind of offhand has its own associated business logic and domain complexities with it. And so PayIt has been utilizing a microservices architecture sort of from the beginning to provide ways to encapsulate the business logic for this domain separately from the business logic for this domain and allow teams to own domains independently of one another. To get a little bit more detail about our use of Kubernetes, we say that we're cloud native, and we mean that. We built in AWS from the beginning in the AWS public cloud. So we're in AWS commercial for a lot of things. Our US production environment is in the AWS GovCloud partition. And we've been deploying to Kubernetes for a long time, since very early 2016. We started with, I think, just 2 clusters, sort of staging and production. We were managing those clusters ourselves. We have since grown a lot since that time. I think at that point in 2016, we had something like 10 total employees. Now we're somewhere around 230, 250, about half of which today is engineering. So we were managing clusters ourselves on EC2 instances. We have since kind of outgrown that, the ability to do that, and we're now running in Amazon EKS. Today we have 6 development environments, dev, staging 1, staging 2, production, and then some separate environments in Canada, over a total of 14 clusters. And we standardized our application deployment with a GitOps model with Argo CD in late 2022. We have since also now migrated all of our infrastructure, our Kubernetes infrastructure, into Argo CD as well. So things like our telemetry collector and all kinds of other Kubernetes platform utilities are managed with Argo CD now. The data team at PayIt is, I say this like I've worked in other data organizations and I haven't, but it feels like we're a little bit atypical, because the data team at PayIt historically has had a really, really strong reporting focus. So the first analytics database at PayIt was stood up not by the data team. We didn't have data people at that time, but by our infrastructure team. And so we built an application that runs in our cluster, consumes the MongoDB operations log data. Our platform is built on MongoDB as a data store. This application consumes the MongoDB operations log and basically just writes it to Postgres as JSON. And so we kind of gave the ability to business users to query with SQL. And this database has really worked very well for us in terms of providing a SQL read replica with very minimal engineering cost of ownership. So it's set up in a way where as we add new databases and new collections to our MongoDB cluster, the corresponding tables just appear magically in this Postgres copy. However, there are some limitations with that. It couples us very tightly to MongoDB specifically, and actually is not compatible with something like AWS Document DB, which does implement the MongoDB API, but the operations log is not part of the public API. It's a private implementation detail. So we're actively deprecating this database today. We expect it to go away in the next couple months. But when the data team at PayIt was created and initially staffed, the focus of the team was building reports out of this database. So things like, you can imagine if you're working with payments in the government, kind of accurate financial reporting is really, really important. And so the data team built this sort of reporting application, this reporting product, so that we can transmit information to government clients about what was paid in our platform. You know, these are the property tax bills that got paid. These are the e-bills that we sent. We have some things where we bill per, you know, e-bill delivery, things like that. There's certain kinds of billing that need reporting to facilitate the billing process. And we kind of very quickly grew this reporting ecosystem to facilitate all of these different kinds of reporting jobs that needed to be run. And the first data hire at PayIt basically wrote Python scripts to produce these things manually, and then just put the Python scripts into the AWS Glue service. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we have just been building in AWS Glue for all of these things. Most of these are in Glue as sort of Python shell jobs, or were in Glue, not anymore. Meaning it's just pure Python. There were a few things that were PySpark, but most of it has just been pure Python. So essentially a CLI application, command line application that runs in Glue, takes parameters, runs on a schedule, was the baseline for us for a number of years. In 2022, at the beginning of the year, we began kind of this next generation data platform that we kind of call humorously the PAW, P-A-W, for PayIt Analytics Warehouse. And this is something that is intended to address some of the limitations of our current approach. So consumes from MongoDB via the public change stream API. We can also consume from AWS Document DB, which we're using for a couple services with more specific needs. And we also have kind of parity of data sources. We're not limited to just our platform data. We can pull in from Google Analytics and from MailChimp for email data and other kinds of AWS sources. And we're sort of just trying to kind of build the modern data stack for ourselves. So we're using dbt. We're running dbt within Argo Workflows to do the data transformation in our new warehouse. But today, basically, we're split 50-50 on the data team, where reporting is a big concern and this new data platform is a big concern. So AWS Glue. We have had a lot of familiarity with AWS Glue over the last 4 or 5 years, but familiarity doesn't necessarily mean expertise. If you're able to solve the problem, the way that you solve the problem becomes the lay of the land and the best practice in the organization, even if it maybe wasn't the best way to solve the problem. And what we have learned in our time using Glue is that we've had some less than ideal practices result. And one of the big reasons for that is because our data team is not specifically skilled in the infrastructure side of things. And the team that we have, our platform engineering team, who knows the infrastructure side better, isn't specifically skilled in the data domain. And so you have this sort of gap where you can't adequately solve it without having some things just not be as good as maybe they should be. One of the things that has been hard for us with Glue was that managing Python dependencies is tricky. So if you want to depend on like a private Python package, you have to bundle it yourself into a zip directory and place it in S3 and make your job aware of it via the arguments. And that's kind of tricky. There's not really an out-of-the-box way to do that. If we were using more of the AWS tooling for deployment to Glue, maybe we could have, but we did a lot with Jenkins at the time. And so we kind of wrote our own things that worked, but were hard, or we ended up being incentivized to not use external dependencies because it was hard to manage. So we just started baking things into this reporting application that maybe should have been separate reusable packages that could be imported elsewhere. So we ended up with kind of a mono repo that we didn't really intend to. Glue also, for these Python shell jobs, it installs dependencies at runtime. And so even if you're not using a private dependency, if you're depending on something from the Python package index, if there's a hiccup in that API, your job will fail and you'll get paged and a report doesn't get delivered. And like, that's really awkward. It's also just really, really hard to manage Glue programmatically. If you want infrastructure as code for Glue, we kind of did it with Terraform, but it was awful. And I had to make the data team learn Terraform. They don't want to learn Terraform. They want to stay in Python all the time. right? And we ended up with this big, complicated Terraform sort of ball of wax that took 2 hours to run. And like, yes, it put everything where it needed to be, but you open a PR and then you go do something else with your day, because by the time all the checks approve and it gets deployed, it's hours, right? It's not what we wanted. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, maybe this explains some of the other challenges, the data team processes just weren't like any other engineering team in my organization. So every other engineering team is writing applications. They have CI/CD and Jenkins. They get deployed to Kubernetes. We had this GitOps model with Argo CD now, where a deploy is just a simple pull request, changing an image version here and there, and your new version of the code goes out. Platform engineering team is investing in the Kubernetes ecosystem. We're adding open telemetry. We're adding better log management. We're doing all these things. None of those enhancements get to the data team. And we wanted that. We would have killed for open telemetry and some of these things. Why is this query taking so long? I don't know. The logs aren't very good. They're not very discoverable. We have no instrumentation layer. So what did we do? Well, we wanted to get unstuck. I had attended KubeCon in Detroit in 2022, where I met Kaylin and JP, and said, hey, we're doing data. My team runs on Kubernetes. Can I do data on Kubernetes? And like, you guys were like, oh yeah, Argo Workflows could do this. It's easy. And we just started talking, and you guys helped us with a couple calls. And it's I came back from KubeCon saying, we got to try this. Like, we really have to try this. It's totally doable. And the thing, we started doing some greenfield work to say, as we were building out this new data warehouse and we needed to sort of create the jobs that fed data into it, there were some open source tools we were using for that. So Meltano is a big one for moving the data from sources to targets, and then DBT to do the transformations within the warehouse. Meltano is an open source CLI program and has a good sort of provided Docker file. It's pretty easy to get up and running in Argo Workflows. And we were interested in the idea of migrating all of our reporting jobs, but that was a scary prospect because there were hundreds of these things. I think in our production environment, we have something like 250 jobs that run every day. And like, if one of those fails and isn't fixed within some SLA period, the flow of money is impacted, and that's a really big deal. And we didn't want to make that change unless we kind of had all of our ducks in a row. And then end of May, Glue broke and we couldn't fix it. And we were on the phone with our AWS support people, and they were escalating it internally, and we were doing support chats, and I don't know what it was. If it ended up, we didn't really ever arrive at root cause. We spent 2 full days, sort of all hands on deck. Reports were broken, nothing worked. We couldn't get Glue working. And I sort of said, if we continue with what we're doing and trying to fix it within Glue, I don't know if there will be a resolution or what the time frame will be. But I'm pretty confident if we just say, screw it, we're going to Argo Workflows right now, that it's like 2-3 days, we come out the other side and it works. And we made that bet, and it worked, and it's been awesome. And so how did we make it happen, right? Like, what's the A to B? So in a summary, first you remove the Glue pieces from the application, which wasn't that sophisticated a thing to do, because Glue for the Python shell is just sort of a thin wrapper around the Python arg parse, like CLI argument handling. So the API isn't that intrusive. We added Dynaconf as a configuration management library. So with Glue, everything kind of gets passed to the job as a parameter, like a command line parameter. And with Argo Workflows, we knew in the Kubernetes world that, secret management, I don't actually know if it's possible to pass it as Argo parameters. I know it's possible as environment variables, and it's possible to mount it as a file in the file system. And Dynaconf is really good for that, because you can have things in a settings file that you can override with environment variables. And so we just sort of quickly said all these things that this job is getting as parameters, we're changing to be Dynaconf settings, and then we can just pass them as environment variables if they're sensitive, pull them from a secret, or we can put them in a settings file and kind of bake it into the application if they're not sensitive. That was a great decision. The ability to have anything overridden as an environment variable has been really good. And we also had the external secrets operator already in our cluster at this time. So setting up the secrets was pretty easy to just create them in AWS Secrets Manager or similar, and then expose them with an external secret resource. We got the application building in Docker, which kind of wasn't that hard. In part, I think because we had this unintentional mono repo, and so we didn't have a lot of dependencies that we needed to figure out. It was just sort of, from Python 3.11, copy my files, we're good to go. And then, okay, we have to do something, and then we run everything on Argo Workflows, right? So what's the something to say, I've got the application able to run in Docker, able to pull secrets from environment variables, but I need it 250 times. So the key for us really was, don't think about it as 250 reports. Think about it as one job that accepts different configuration values, right? And so really what we found as we were sort of getting this application to build in Docker and have more of a single entry point, et cetera, is we have 9 kinds of reports. There's like 9 fundamental types of reports, right? So there's like a sort of financial remittance report. There's an e-billing remittance report, et cetera. There's a kind of consolidation job that runs and groups all of the reports for the day and puts them in a location for our finance team. And there's 9 kinds of reports. There's not 250 reports. There's 9 reports. And some of them have subtypes. So, you can invoke the financial remittance report with a particular report name, because different clients have different preferences around the format that they receive that report in, et cetera. And then you have your runtime environments, right? Like, am I running this where I want it to page me if it fails? Okay, pass the should page true flag. Or should this run and write the output file to a location where I can retrieve it, or should it actually send the output file to the client, right? That's another kind of parameter we could have at runtime. And what we did was we basically took some of the legacy AWS Glue CloudFormation templates that we had, some of the other things we had in Terraform, and said, okay, these are the things that we need to be able to pass to a job, right? Like, we're never passing anything that's not one of these 5 or 6 kind of key runtime arguments. Everything else we can specify globally. And so we ended up defining a simple configuration format in a schema. And we could take every job that needed to run and represent it in the schema as a little YAML file, like 6 or 7 line YAML file. This is the name of the job. This is the schedule that it runs on as a cron expression. These are the particular arguments it gets passed, right? Does it use this FTP? Okay, it's this name for the secret that it's going to retrieve that credential from. Does it use the client-owned FTP directory? Okay, it uses this secret name, whatever. And then with the Hera SDK for Argo, which is really sort of part of the magic in being able to do this quickly, we could literally just build functions that returned Argo Workflows resource definitions and just call the function on everything in a directory, right? I have this directory of configuration files. These 200 jobs run in our production environment every day. I have those YAML files, and just write a script that says, for every configuration file in this directory, generate a cron workflow that will invoke the right template with the right set of parameters. And then we just have 2 scripts. So we're not 100% automated today. We're close. But I can, in this sort of application repository, the source of truth for this reporting code base, I can add new configurations. I can say, oh, this new client went live. Here's their little 6-line YAML configuration file that says they get this report at this schedule and it has this parameter passed to it. And then I run a script we call build workflows that uses the Hera SDK, generates everything, produces the actual YAML manifests. And then over in my separate repository that's watched by Argo CD, I run a command called update manifests, and that just copies everything into the appropriate directory structure. So I can make a pull request that will actually update the running clusters. And so this is great, right? It's let us do what we need to do. But the thing that I didn't actually realize until I was in the writing this talk is I knew going into this that it was a really powerful abstraction to have Hera and this SDK for the data team to be able to write Python code, and it generates this infrastructure layer for them. They don't have to worry about the Kubernetes specifics, right? We can just say, these are these templates, you write things against these templates, and the sort of runtime stuff happens for you. I knew that was going to be really valuable to abstract away the Kubernetes complexity. But that abstraction works the other way around too. And that's been really cool and less expected for me, where the platform engineering team understands Kubernetes. They don't understand the data domain. So they also benefit really strongly from this abstraction, because they don't have to look at 250 YAML manifests to say, how can we make the data things more performant? They can look at this 10 or 11 Python functions that are Hera generating these Argo Workflows resources, and they can say, oh, you're not setting pod garbage collection, like you need to do that, right? Like when you're looking at 10 things instead of 250 things, they can jump much more easily into the Kubernetes things that need attention. It abstracts away the data domain for them. So I had come across a blog post recently by Nicholas Mori, who's at Acuity, called about the rendered manifest pattern, which gives a name for this idea. And I was really excited that somebody had given this a name, because I think it's really, really powerful. The idea that our data team can write in Python at this abstraction layer, and then the YAML is generated from that. We don't really treat the YAML as a first-class artifact. Yes, we do code review of it. Yes, it's part of the CI/CD process, but the sort of Python definitions with Hera for these Argo workflow resources are the source of truth. And to us, that's been really, really powerful. So that is my talk. I'm aware I'm a little over time. I apologize for that, but I could go all day about this stuff. This has been a really good experience for us getting onto Kubernetes.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Matt. That was really great. Really cool that you got into detail there too. That's awesome. And yeah, I guess we'll open up the floor if anyone has questions. I'll check the chat. Feel free to drop them in the chat too. I'll kick it off with one question for you, which was, I thought it was really interesting how, you distilled those 250 jobs down into 9 core jobs. Could you describe like what your process was? How long did that take to like get into that kind of distillation and really seeing that the power of Argo and Hera is that sort of like the modularization you can take advantage of?
It kind of wasn't even something that we were that intentional about going into it. But again, right, we had this kind of monorepo that had arisen over time rather than really being architected. And you just kind of realize as you're looking at it, like, oh, these things are actually all calling this like base class in Python. And then, oh, there's really like 3 things going on here. Let's give each of them a name. And then in addition to kind of the core reporting application, there were 2 or 3 other small separate applications where we had said, as we're doing this migration, okay, so we've got this big reporting application, which is the really important stuff because that's transfer of funds impact. And it's got these 3 categories in it. And we have these like 2 little repos we need to migrate individually. Or we could just say this big repository, we just add basic types to it, and those little things we just pull into this big repository. Now we actually have a monorepo that we intend. So it was sort of like you see a pattern and then you make it explicit, I think, more than really going in and saying we're going to make a small number of types. And I think we still have some work to do to make it more obvious that like that's the way to do it. So, in some of these, we have a type, this idea of like a base type and a subtype where you pass the report name of a subtype, and there's this little one-off thing that like sort of works in that same pattern, but the passing of the subtype is different. And so we want to bring that in line officially and say like the major type, minor type, whatever we call it, pattern applies to everything. But it also gives us a good springboard to build in additional kinds of use cases now that we have a better pattern defined. So
Yeah, were there any features in Argo or Hera that made that process easier?
I mean, honestly, the Argo workflows and Hera piece, like, I don't want to say it was like easy, but it was just really easy. Like that wasn't the hard part, you know, and that was great. Because like, I don't know, I'm biased here because I have more Kubernetes experience than the rest of my team, but it's like it's just Kubernetes, right? Like with Glue, the idea of like I need to test something and I want to test it in Glue, not on my local machine. Okay, well, do I copy an existing job and change the name or the parameter? Like, what's the process for that? It's like, well, with Argo, like I can just kubectl apply to my dev environment and like run it all I want. You know, like it's just so powerful that all of these abstractions, all of these working patterns we had already had practice with, experience with in other parts of our organization, now we get on the data team too. Right. And this is something that we had a lot of conversations around internally, where if I don't know something about Glue, I need to go engage our AWS support people and get on a call. Maybe they have to bring in an expert. Like if I don't know something about Kubernetes, I can just grab anybody on platform engineering and they'll talk to me about it. You know, like bringing that kind of support system in-house has been really powerful too. Cool. Yeah, so I'm seeing the question in the chat from Anton: data scientists, data engineers onto Kubernetes. That's an ongoing process, and I'll be very honest here. Like part of the reason we did what we did is because I found myself the one saying like we're just going to do this, and I have the Kubernetes experience to feel confident that we can make it happen. But we've been doing good knowledge transfer with the team, and actually I've been kind of handing off the data responsibilities. We've hired a new director with like real specific data experience, and so partly it's training and upskilling the team on Kubernetes, which they kind of had been doing a little bit because they also own a couple applications that run in cluster. So the application that consumes the operations log from MongoDB is one that this team owns, and they've done deploys. They've done things like, you know, setting new environment variables or configuring deployments. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. But again, the Hera abstraction with letting them stay in Python has been really powerful. You know, and if I say, oh, to change this, you go update this YAML manifest, their eyes kind of glaze over. But if I say like you add an additional parameter to your function and this becomes dynamic, like they get that, right? Like they're very happy to be staying in Python. And we also, as the data team sort of changes here, going forwards, like I also have the ability to sort of say, actually the Hera Argo workflow stuff, like that's going to stay platform engineering. And, you know, that's part of the platform, and your interfaces, these Python scripts, like we may end up doing something more like that, where we keep that infrastructure layer under the platform engineering umbrella rather than under the data team. Still kind of TBD on that, but
yeah, I've worked with a wide variety of people with experiences. We're from data analysts all the way to machine learning engineers who actually know Kubernetes really well. So yes, the experience will be super different between those. So that's what I was curious about that one. I know also, like, especially for people coming from Airflow, let's say, or other platforms, they're not used to the container spec of Kubernetes. So Hera is in Python, but you still have to specify the container spec, and that's like one thing I know that really confuses people. So I don't know if you had trouble with that. The other one I might have a question is if how was the UI experience for them?
On the whole, I think the UI experience has been very good. We continue to have, and maybe this is just a question of us being more diligent about the documentation and sort of upskilling ourselves, but we continue to have like the occasional little bit of weirdness where, like, looking at the workflow UI where, oh, do I need to check everything to see things because I don't see anything, or do I need to uncheck everything to see things? Like, there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's inconsistency or if it's just kind of user behavior on our side, but as we have learned more about Argo workflows, there's some things that I do wish we had kind of done at the start. The big one for me would have been like setting a default node group on the like workflow controller config map or whatever. I think there's a way to set the node group as a default. And we didn't set the node group at the beginning. And so we have set up an Argo Workflows node group, and now we're going and setting it on running things, but it just would have been nicer to do it all at the beginning and feel more confident that like everything Argo Workflows is on its own node group.
You make the default workflow spec. Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. And then the other thing was like setting up workflow persistence, the archive, which has just been awesome. Like that in and of itself has solved business challenges that we hadn't really even known we could solve that easily. Because again, with Glue, right, we have this system of client managers on our team, client success representatives, et cetera, who want to know, did all the reports go out this morning? Let me check. Did my clients get their reports on time? Is there anything I need to be aware of? And with Glue, like, do I give the Glue console access to my client team? I don't want to do that. Like, do we write something to scrape the Glue API and build a report for them? With the workflow persistence stuff, it's just been great. We can very, very easily just kind of expose those persisted workflow records into our data warehouse, and they can have Tableau dashboards that just say, like, let me see what my clients got today. Oh, this client got this thing delayed. It's been awesome.
I didn't think of doing ETL to Tableau. But
for us, it's been super powerful. And one of the things I think we did get right with the Hera kind of abstraction layer was we set up good tagging from the beginning. And so the workflows were getting tagged with like, this is the project, this is the base name, this is the subtype of the report, all these things. And so that can be aggregated out very nicely on the kind of BI side to say, these are my clients, give me all the reports that are tagged with my clients. Like we can just kind of do pretty easily. So that has been really nice. We added the workflow archive for ourselves, and it immediately was like, oh, actually, this is just super valuable to just push to business users about what ran and what didn't. And that's something, if I did it again, I would just do it day one before anything was running.
Yeah, gotcha. I never thought of exposing the like database onto to Tableau, but it's an interesting use case. For the UI, we do often have, sometimes there's for folks coming from other platforms, I think Glue is maybe an exception because Glue is not the best UI to begin with. Is that like because it's Kubernetes native, Argo Workflows, it's not specific to like a CI platform or a data platform. And so like things like teams or something are not explicit in Kubernetes. They're a label maybe. So some of those use cases are one of the ones where we're looking to like see what we can do around those.
Yeah, and I think like going forwards, that is something we'll have to reckon with, because we do have a couple kind of key stakeholders for the data team who had access to the Glue console so they could go run a report manually. That is something we couldn't schedule because they need to run this report when the client initiates something manually. And so like, do we give those people access to the Argo UI, or do we kind of build something internally where it's like, you need this report, you push this button and it'll call out to the Argo API is probably what we'll end up doing. But I don't know. There's all kinds of use cases where I'm interested to take Argo. We have databases where we do CI/CD that's currently in GitHub Actions, and to me that's like a no-brainer to put in Argo Workflows and have it kind of internal to the same cluster where the database is, and we can lock down access that much more, not have to worry about calling out to that database from outside of our VPC. So we're going to expand our usage of Argo, and I'd love to standardize on it for all kinds of workflows that we're doing in Jenkins today or GitHub Actions today. But
yeah, if you have like users that you need specific access to certain things, because right now Workflows is based on like Kubernetes RBAC, so you can give them access to like literally specific workflows and only those workflows, or like the workflow templates if they need to submit them specifically.
Yeah, and that's something we haven't really explored, is like, what's the right kind of RBAC for Argo Workflows? Today, it's just the data team has kind of the general developer RBAC where, we can kind of, we have read-only access in production, or we have an ability to assume like an edit role, which will alert, appropriate security people if we have to do that in production. But we would like to do more fine-grained sort of divisions. We just haven't yet.
Gotcha. Thanks for the answer.
Thank you.
Fun questions. Yeah, anyone else have questions? I think we have a few more minutes we can do questions on. One quick one, Matt, for you would be, yeah, other than the fine-grained RBAC, do you have any other kind of big to-dos with the platform, specifically as it relates to the data processing and reporting generation that you've talked about today?
I don't know. There's a lot of things I'm interested in. So one of the other things that, like, we had the data team had absorbed somebody into the team just 3 or 4 months ago, and then we've kind of split the data team to hand off this kind of core reporting and analytics part to this new director, and I'm keeping this person under me on platform engineering who had joined recently, but he has sort of been the owner of ETL into our platform, where the data team has really been focused on like platform and things downstream of that. He's upstream. And so we have always used Apache NiFi for data into the platform, right? We have all these sort of government integrations. A lot of governments don't have an API. They have a flat file system, or they have a system of record where they can just click export every day and get a big CSV. And so they'll place that on our FTP, and this Apache NiFi processor, or this flow file, whatever it's called, will grab those things, process them, load them into our platform appropriately. And we have been undertaking this big Apache NiFi kind of modernization effort to move it into the clustered NiFi this quarter, and then potentially to move it into Kubernetes. And I keep looking at it and I keep thinking, like, can't we just use Argo Workflows for this? And I think about, okay, we've got our kind of core Kubernetes platform. We've got this NiFi platform. Can we just have one platform instead of two?
Yep.
Not that Apache NiFi is bad. It's been good for us in a lot of ways. It is effective in this kind of problem space, but it's just, again, it's the one thing that's different, right? It's Ansible and a little bit of Terraform, and it's, a lot of direct EC2 access. And man, if we could just have that within Kubernetes in the same control plane, like that would be so cool.
Yeah, if you want to
maybe someday
add monitoring to it too, then you can just, if it's all Argo, things can start conforming as a platform.
Yeah, but more and more, like coming away from KubeCon this year, I love the direction so many conversations are taking around like standardization on the Kubernetes control plane as like a powerful layer of abstraction. And I'm really excited about that same thing. The idea of getting NiFi into that and saying, like, this is how we operate, is with this control plane for everything. That's really cool to think about.
Right on. Yeah, if we don't have any other questions, I guess we'll do one last call and then we could wrap up. But yeah, thanks so much, Matt, for joining us today and the detailed presentation here. Really appreciate it, and excited to hear, yeah, Argo's been a success for you, and that Hera also helped, the data users migrate to Kubernetes as well. So congrats on all the effort.
Thank you. Thank you guys again for letting me talk to you. It's been, I really could do this all day. I like talking about this.
Great. We'll have you back in a couple months once, you've migrated off of Apache NiFi too.
Well, we acquired another company for the first time earlier this year. And so I'm also sort of looking at their stack and wondering, like, are there pieces we can pull into the Kubernetes ecosystem, because they're not on Kubernetes. So that also is probably going to be something I spend some energy on over the next year or so. But yeah, we'll see. I'd love to do some kind of follow-up.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Yeah, we'll hopefully catch you next month. And if not, in the new year. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Take care.